Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. I'm Joanna Newting, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
Hi, sister. How's it going?
Well, it's going amazing because Katie is passing around Tejas Tonics right now, and we are in one of our favorite humans' living rooms. Aaron, thank you so much for providing Tejas Tonic and joining us on the podcast.
Well, you are just so absolutely welcome. It's so nice to have y'all over here, and it's nice to be able to share a little bit of our local creation.
Yeah, listen to this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a fine sound.
It is
Sure
a
is.
fine sound.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Aaron is the very first person I met in the Texas hemp industry.
that's right.
And, I knocked it out of the park.
The sun shines on a dog's bottom once in a while. That's what we say where I'm from.
Well, I feel like at least once a day.
At least once a day
Multiple
around here.
times.
I mean, because we're winning, because, we're getting to grow hemp.
Yes.
Yes. And we just filled our bellies with pozole, went on a little drive around the property this morning, enjoyed a J, because we do put the J back in Tejas around here.
That is exactly right. We put the J right back in Texas.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. The buggy ride. A buggy ride's good for the soul.
Oh, that's how it's supposed to go. We put the
J back in Texas.
Okay. See?
And then when you get after that, what you have is a Tejas.
There you go.
Do you know what Tejas actually means?
Dion, I think she knows. What is it?
Friend.
That's right. Tejas means friendship, right? The original word for Tejas was friendship. And then later, as the Spanish influence took over more and more and Mexico became a thing, it went into most people thinking Tejas is Spanish for Texas, which it is. People use it for Texas as well. But the real root of the word is friendship, friendly, friend.
And that's why Tejas Tonic is always in a friendly
That's
state.
right. That's why you find us
Absolutely.
always in a friendly state.
I love
Amen.
that. See, that's one of the best things about your brand is how thoughtful and clever it all is and how very much on point it is. You're totally fine. You just have a seat, lovely. And so
Well, thank you.
we're gonna get to that in a little bit, but because Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Soil Sisters podcast, I want people to know you. So we're gonna go back to your West Texas beginnings and then mosey on up the road to Tejas Tonic.
All right. All the way back to the roots. Then we'll do some moseying. We know how to do that for sure.
We do.
Especially with another sip of this here tonic.
All right. So yeah, you grew up further West Texas than Crystal and I did. So then Crystal and I did. What?
Dead. Then you did. How many syllables are in the word did?
2 to 3.
Wow. I mean, this tonic really brought out my
effective.
Texan.
It's very effective.
Yeah. So anyway, talk a little bit about that and let's
West
start the
Texas. Yeah, I'm
journey.
from the real West Texas. We call you people from the Panhandle, Flatlanders. I know y'all claim West Texas, but you're really like Texas Yankees. But you know what? We love you anyways. And actually, all of Texas we love because that's how we are.
I think they put us there because it's so dry and deserty. They're just like, bless
Here,
your
y'all-
hearts.
y'all just here, bless your hearts. Y'all go over here. We were in the desert as well. I'm actually from San Angelo originally, which is the largest town in the United States without an interstate running through it.
Congratulations.
So the biggest small town with all the trouble you can possibly get into without getting into like real trouble. Some people accomplished that, but most of us stayed just this side of that. So San Angelo, all the way out from San Angelo to McCamey. Most people never heard of that little speck of a town. It was a boom town in the 20s. You know, oil field, whatever, same old West Texas story, and then nothing. And now there's 900 people living in the desert. So it was in McCamey. Then El Paso for a couple years. Found my way to the bus station, down to the transfer station so I could walk across into Juarez. When I was about 14 and 15, I would escort myself into Mexico
Oh, goodness.
by myself, which was fun because, you know, coming from San Angelo and McCamey and Ozona, you end up in Del Rio and you learn how to navigate getting into Mexico. It used to be 50 cents on the turnstile and you just walk. And once you do that a few times, you get brave and you know it's not a big deal. So by the time I made El Paso, Juarez was just like, whatever, I'm here, let's go. And then from there back to Angelo and then over to Abilene, all before I graduated high school. So West Texas.
It's
A lot
in your
of West
blood.
Texas,
Yeah.
absolutely. Covered the country.
Yeah. So was it just inevitable that you ended up in farming and ranching?
For me, it's a passion thing, right? It's like if you're fortunate, when you grow up in West Texas, you get weekends or summers or adventures to your friends or family's ranching environments, right? And I know y'all have all been there, and it's like, dude, the ranching environment, it just evokes a spirit that it's just like no other, and you can't ignore it. And so it's so far away in a sense that is that even really happening? And most people in town don't even realize that that lifestyle still exists. But if you ever get a taste of it, it's just like, it's so overwhelmingly amazing. And then you have a decision, like the only way to get it is if you go all in or you won't get it. You can't buy it.
Well, people try to, and that's what we call weekend cowboys.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if you had a lot of money, you could buy the ranch, I guess, and put yourself in that position, but it's just a chingo load of money. Most people can't do that. And so the reality is you just got to go all in.
Yeah.
And if you want it, you know, so for me, yeah, I wouldn't say it was inevitable. I mean, first thing I pursued was cannabis because I love it. But at some point I realized that if I wanted to continue to play let's just say if I wanted to play from a Texas perspective, that I was putting at risk my own, you know, prison.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. Right. It's like, I don't want to do that. So it's like, oh, well, I can go to California. You know, I don't really think I'm cut out for California. So I'll just go back to West Texas and do the other thing that I love, which is ranching. You know, it's like if I can't do cannabis from Texas, then I'm only going to do what I love, and what I love is ranching. That's the next thing I love the most. Okay, let's go do that. So somehow I did make it back to that. And now at this point, it is inevitable because it's totally who I am and what I do, but that's the end goal from where we stand today as well.
Yeah. Well, we had no choice. We're fifth generation. And when our parents split up, when I was 3, Crystal was 6, there was no option. We were just, you're being raised on this ranch. This is your heritage, and you need to know this. This is going to be in your blood too.
Yes. And we were totally prepared for that. I grew up as a small child, respecting, loving, and appreciating my dad, being so proud of what he was doing.
Totally.
And knowing, like, I'm going to do that.
Heck yeah.
Like, it wasn't like someone was asking me or telling me. It was just what I knew was going to happen. So.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's like inspiring. I mean, when I was like in Ozona, there was I'll throw a name out just because why not? Old Dwight Childress, right? It's like he's one of the old school. I mean, one of the last of the old school. On
Did
levels
they name
of,
a town after him?
well, his whole family, yeah, that family, Childress is a big name. But those guys are just from a time that most people can't even calculate today. But when we were kids, he would put all the kids on horseback and just throw us out there and be like, go do something, fill a hole, you know, do something. And so we'd be trailing sheep or Angora goats in the summers. And it's like, you get a dose of that in your system. You're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like in your horseback in the desert, trailing, you know, thousands of sheep and goats. Now you're in the shearing pens, a bunch of Mexican folk talking in Spanish. You're around for the first time. Like, you are living,
Yeah.
you know, and you're just like, this, I don't know what this is, but I like it. And like, that's what it was like. And old Dwight would put all the kids to work. That's where I got my initial cowboying exposure as like a real young kid. And then it was just like, oh man, now it's in your blood after that. So yeah, that's the way it was. And then, you know, ended up in town and high school and then all those things. And then at some point I ended up going back out there to West Texas, to Ozona. A bunch of my grandparents had moved in there in the 70s. They ran the bar. They always ran the bar, restaurant, and motel. That was like their deal. So all the rowdies would hang out at the bar, and they all liked my grandma because she ran things, had 8 kids, and really just like kept everybody in line. And 2 of my aunts married 2 first cousins from that county, Crockett County, and then had a bunch of kids. My family started getting ingrained in Ozona, and over time, always getting to go back and visit. It was like later, I was 23, headed out on the road, went and saw a bunch of music, basically just pursued music and cannabis. And like, that's all I wanted was learn more about cannabis. How can I get involved legally? And live music, live music, live music. And then it was like, okay, cannabis means California, you know, and then like I go to Ozona, and my cousins basically had gotten into the position where he was in control of a large ranch. And I was visiting someone at one place, and I went to Ozona to borrow a gun to go back to the other place to hunt. And he's like, hey, we're working goats next weekend. What are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm working goats. And so I got back in. Next thing you know, he's got me horseback back out in the pasture. I got a rope in my hand, hadn't done all that in many years at that point. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And so I literally fell in, and I never looked back. Like I was like, this is what I'm going to do until cannabis legalization occurs to the point that I can operate from a Texas perspective. And at 23, I started my leaning into what would become like the next 16 years of my experience.
Nice. Yeah. So you leaned in to the ranching side of things.
Oh, yeah.
And did you go to work for someone? Did you immediately say, I want to buy my own animals? What'd you do?
So in the very beginning, I had 1 dog, Sugar Magnolia, and I had 1 bedroll and 1 Toyota, and I had no money. And so what you do is you start cowboying. So cowboying's $100 a day. It's like in the beginning, I didn't even have my own tack. I didn't have a saddle. Like I just went and started working for this cousin of mine, and it was like $100 a day when you're working livestock, and then you work for them, you make $100 a day. You bust your butt 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, everything you got almost kill you every day for $100. You know, and then you end up start working for other people. And then I just did that for a while and just save money. I did that for, I don't know, it would seem few years. And then I got my first ranch job, and it was an old man had passed away. Same story. Daughters inherited it. Foreman was causing havoc with a lot of situations. We won't get too much in detail, but next thing you know, they're like, listen, we need somebody we can trust. There's over 4,000 head of goats that have come out of this place, and we don't have anyone on the ground. We don't know if we're getting robbed blind or not. And they'd called my cousin and asked if he would come in and ride on this gathering to make sure everything was legit. And then he was going to do it. And then his wife and his wife basically got in his ear and was like, you can't go down there. That dude's been to prison. They're going to beat you up. He got scared, called me. Hey, you want this gig? I was like, hell yeah, I'm in. And so I loaded up and hauled ass down to the Southern County and got in there with some old boys, and we got after it. And we went and caught a bunch of goats. And then the folks, when that was over with, they offered me a job. I got my first job. It was $800 a month. I had $100 per month grocery allowance, and I got $5 for every wild goat that I caught after that. So essentially everybody moved out that was there. The women lived in the city, and I was on 10 sections, which is like 6,500 acres. And my job was to basically map the place out, reverse engineer all the water systems, get all the water troughs going. There's 37 water troughs, 5 water wells, so windmills, and like figure all that out. And then while I'm at it, catch the rest of this livestock and get it out of here. So over like 2 years, I trapped like 980 something head. Like I had almost moved out 1,000 head. Somewhere along the way, I saved all my money for like 5 months worth of money. I went and got myself a saddle, right? And then ended up getting a horse, and I'm just stacking. And then in 11, the fires came through, burned the place down. Lost control of the last 80 head of goats that we couldn't figure. I had it whittled down to 87 head, knew where they were. And then the fires came. Fires burned the place down, and scratched my head and was like, well, they weren't going to need me anymore because they went into like a program where you get paid not to ranch because the land had burned down. And so I eased my way over to Sutton County, right on the county line of Crockett and Sutton on the Dry Devils River. And I got 1,000 acres where a guy just wanted me to live there for free and trade for making sure no one poached. But I said, well, I got to run livestock. And he had a 200-acre trap with a fence, and the other 1,000 acres was just wide open. Basically, I said, I'll do it if you'll let me use the land for livestock. He's like, I don't have fences. I was like, I'll handle that. He's like, all right. And so I went in there, and all that money that I'd saved, I had $16,000 saved up. And coming out of the drought, the market started going back up on roping cattle, which was what I was mostly trading at the time. I pulled out and went to Pagosa Springs and tried to get a house to grow weed in because I had gotten a little frustrated. And I was like, the hell with this. Colorado's online. We're going to grow weed. I went up there, and then it's like I had this awesome house all built out for growing right in the middle of town. Dude was going to give me, like, everything was a home run. $89,000. It was like a no-brainer. But I didn't have any assets or taxes or any of that stuff. And they were like, I couldn't get in. And then this hippie banker was like, I got you. I'll let you in. But you got to pay. To get this loan, you got to go back and pay $60,000 in taxes, and then I can make you eligible for this loan. And I'm like, I always knew there was a way to make this happen, but who in the hell's got $60,000? I had 16. So I was like, damn it. So I went back to Texas. I went to the bank. I was like, will y'all loan me money to buy a house to grow weed in Pagosa Springs? And the dude just laughed at me in Ozona. Right?
That's literally what you said.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be straight up. And he's like, Aaron, we don't know. And I was like, well, will you loan me money to, what will you loan me money?
How old are you?
I'm 20, right there. I'm 26 or 7.
Okay.
Right. I'm like, I've been out at it. I've been cowboying now for a couple years. I'm going back and forth to Austin to get my cultural fill. And like, I'm chasing a little music here and there, but like, I'm just all about cowboying and trying to get out and trying to get access to the country. Damn it, am I going to live in this single wide trailer on the south facing hill with no trees in this freaking desert and just sit here and cook? I'll go to Ozona Bank. Hey, man, will you loan me the money? He goes, absolutely not. I'm like, golly, nobody will. Like, how do you get ahead around here? Like, what will you loan me money on? Will you loan me money to buy some cows? He goes, we loan money on livestock. And I was like, oh, a little light bulb went off. I was like, okay. And so I ended up getting my first ever loan. I gave him $16,000 and he gave me $16,000, dollar for dollar. Took that $32,000 and I went and bought 21 head of Coriani cows. And then I bought 32 head of used roping cattle. And then a week later, I sold those 21 head I bought them for $750. I sold them for $1,000 delivered to Oklahoma. So I made $250 times 21, whatever that is, like $5,250. So I made $5,000. Frickin' went back to the bank. I was like, all right, here's your $16,000 that I owe you. And here's $5,000 in the bank. And then I went and leased those 32 head out and started a contracting business where I was leasing them out to these team ropers for practice cattle, making $40 a head a month. So now I got $1,280 coming in a month, $5,000 in the bank, and I'm in the business.
Way to go.
Yeah.
And he was like, damn. I was like, I want to do it again. And he's like, well, you don't need a loan. You need a line of credit. And I'm like, well, what's that? And then he starts talking to me about a line of credit. And then I'm like, well, hell yeah. And he's like, well, here, he gave me a $25,000 line of credit. Went straight to buy some Corianis. You know, Coriani cattle are like roping cattle that are these really small framed. Coriani means common in Spanish. You take the Texas Longhorn with the big horns and the big frames and you put them down into Mexico for about 1,000 years or however long, hundreds of years. And they get smaller. Their horns get shorter. Their frames get smaller. They get leaner. They're more apt to live in the desert. So that's what we use to rope and rodeo with because they're the most durable, right? Yeah. And so a lot of people that trade in these cattle, it's like knowing the difference, like really knowing the difference between an indica and a sativa. It's all an herb. But do you really know?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it is. And these guys were trying to trade longhorns to me. And I was like, hey, man, I was born at night, but not last night. Like, I don't want those. Those are longhorns. And I came back and told my banker, I was like, the deal didn't go through. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, they didn't have Corianis. He's like, and you told them no? I was like, yeah. He goes, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
I go to buy the cattle, but we needed to fill a pot, which is a truck. And I'm like, hey, I need 50 grand, not 25. He's like, what? I'm like, well, if we're going to trade, we need to fill a pot. And a pot's a pot load of cattle. I was like, that's $50,000 because there's 100 of them and they're 500 a piece. And then I went to do that first deal and came back and told him it didn't go through. And then he was extra proud of me because he'd just given me the 50K. So anyways, next thing you know, I started buying and selling cattle, and that's the way it started. And I bought and sold cattle, and everything I bought, I put into that 200 acres down there on that little trap in the Dry Devils River in the middle of absolutely nowhere with no phone service anywhere, like 50 miles in all directions from anything. And I would get up in the morning and I'd kick all the cattle out in the riverbed and let them go for the day. And then in the evenings, me and the dog would go down there and bring them back up and put them up. And that's how I did it. I grazed the open land and just did it the old fashioned way. and I was leasing them out. And then I got to where I had the heifers, and the heifers were getting leased out with a bull in them. And then I'd get them back 6 months pregnant, turn them out, make cows. And that's how I got the whole business going. And then 8.5 years in, I got my first ranch leased, and I turned the goats on. And then I turned the goats on, then I turned the guard dogs on, then I turned the working dogs on. Then I had 4 different sets of genetics I was managing.
So pause. You just have a business-minded brain, period.
Definitely.
Oh,
You know, the fact that you were figuring that out at a young age.
In your 20s. Wow.
I love it. I mean, I look at some 30-year-old men now, and I'm just like, you're a man child. What is happening? So I love that about you. And you got into breeding livestock. This is something that I think shapes what you do now with the Tejas hemp, Tejas Tonic. So let's go into that a little bit. Like,
you don't want to just talk about livestock all day?
no. So let's talk about how you started honing in and recognizing that the breeding and the genetics thing was so critical.
Yeah, the easiest way to learn genetics is when you're the guy that has to pay for the feed or the medicine, right? They say fit your cow to your country. If you want to raise cattle, sheep, goats, it doesn't matter. They're all going to live on the land. If you want the big fancy ones that bring the most and look the prettiest, they probably need the most amount of physical input, the most amount of medicine, and they need supplemental feed. Well, all 3 of those things cost money, which is something I've never had. So my whole thing is about how do I create an animal that can live by itself without me giving it any medicine, without me giving it any food? Like, I just want to give it salt, water, and fences.
Well, and in holistic management, that is, I want my animals to work for me. I don't want to work for my animals.
There you go. And so you learn quickly how to do things like rotational grazing and stocking rates and really understanding. And then you pick and choose genetics. An example would be like, let's say you have a bunch of goats and you go out into the country and you're doing your rotational grazing and everything's going fine. But then some of them start getting wormy. It's like, okay, do I want to worm the whole herd? I mean, no, I don't. I don't want to worm any of them. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to worm y'all. And if y'all don't make it, you're either going to die or I'm going to sell you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking the ones that I want and I'm going to put them over here. And selectively, it's the same as picking phenotypes in, cannabis production. You're picking the phenotypes of the species that you desire and you're moving them to the side that are most appropriate for your environment. And so it's like you learn quickly with that. So for me, it was Coriani cattle. What's the most rankest, leanest, meanest, can live on nothing, Corianis from straight out of Mexico are like the rankest straight out of the desert, or down in Southern Crockett County, Valverde County. You can't beat them. And same with the Spanish goats. You get real Spanish goats, not Boer goats. Then the next thing you know, you get guard dogs, and you got to figure out what kind of guard dogs. I was running a Pyrenees blend. And then you get into your working dogs, and it's like, you've got border collies. That's obvious, but the Kelpies are leaner. They can run longer. They can stand more heat. And so if you're horseback and doing all this the old fashioned way, because it's the cheapest way to do it, then you need all that. And so that's when you learn about genetics. And then you start zooming in on genetics. And then it's like, when cannabis wasn't around. Cannabis was always around, but it's really easy to look into cannabis and discern, from my perspective, the differences in them based on a scientific thought. Like, it's easy to identify at this point. Technology you can see cannabinoids, you can see terpenes, you can see so many things. So if you just study that, you can immediately see the difference. And then you can do anything you want, selective breeding for whatever traits or types you want.
Well, and of course, my farmer friends in Northern California, they can just eyeball a plant from 20 feet away and tell you which one it is. Mm-hmm. And they'll start talking about the leaf structure and the stem and, is it bushy? How does it fall? All the colors. They can just look at it from a long way away. Most people would need to see a certificate of analysis or whatever to be able to just identify stuff.
Agriculture is agriculture. And once you get so versed in it because you're immersed in it, it's just what you say. You can look out there and, like, my one friend's wife was like, can you tell me what kind of gals those are just by looking? I'm like, yeah, duh. It's like same with cannabis plants. some of those guys are on a whole level, right? But when you've created the genetics you want, either you created them or you got them from someone else and you dialed them in because you're trying to create a system that's consistent and that you can reproduce over and over. And that's how you build a business. And that's challenging with agriculture because nothing is the same. So how many of the control factors are you going to put in your control or leave to nature? If you're growing indoor, you control everything. You can literally create the same thing over and over and over and over and over. But when you move outdoor, it's not like that. And so they control their genetics to the point that they even have their seeds now where all their seeds are putting out the same phenotype, the same structure, same everything. They do that for 7 or 8 years. They can see it from 40, 50 feet away. Oh, there's my OG Kush, there's my Sweet Island skunk. They can just tell.
Well, and of course, when you talk about being able to do everything consistently when you grow it indoors, but the thing that you're removing is nature.
Yeah.
So I'm still full-term sun-grown kind of a gal.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Marketability is what creates easy to sell cannabis, and hydroponic cannabis grown indoors will always have the eye to the common perspective. You look at it and you're like, oh my God, that sells.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like if you get to the connoisseur level, most and a lot of folk will agree that organic soil grown offers a more dynamic experience because one spoonful of soil has a bazillion microorganisms.
Yes.
And whatever you're putting in your water to grow hydro, which I that's where I started, you might just put, 3 parts nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. It's basic. Oh, and then you might add 15 micronutrients. Okay, sweet. You have 18 things. This soil has like, a million things. So there's just a difference in what's scientifically possible.
Yeah.
And also what's actually available to the plant. And it's either naturally the bacteria and fungi being cycled through the protozoa and nematodes. So it's absolutely what the plant needs as opposed to whatever the
synthetic.
The plant's not forced to make do.
Exactly.
It has available to it everything that it has been, naturally built to process.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. The God-given
so cool
pieces of the equation. All right. So we're talking about breeding animals.
We've got animal husbandry right on the microphone. Cattle, goats, dogs, two kinds of dogs.
I love it. So you did this for how long?
My full-term ranching foray has been a total of about 16 years. I wouldn't say I'm completely out of it, but I'm 99.9% out of it. At this point, I'm just hanging on to what I got so I can do it more later.
Yeah. So
16 years of giving it everything I had.
When you told me that you had basically gone all in on Tejas Tonic, I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like? Like, what percentage of the herd did you sell? And you said I sold 98%.
Yeah, all of them. It's like it took me 8.5 years to get my own ranch lease, which is very hard to do. And I did that. And then I made it all the way to year 16. And it's like somewhere in there, the original pilot program for the Farm Bill happened. So 2014, that happened. In 15, we were in Kittredge, Colorado, and they were growing hemp in a greenhouse. First, I think, hemp crop in the state of Colorado.
Like medical hemp?
No, just hemp, straight
just
up hemp.
Industrial hemp.
So in 2014, the Farm Bill actually had a pilot program that said institutes of higher education, which would be universities and schools, or government agencies, aka departments of agriculture, could issue licenses to people to cultivate, manufacture, and market industrial hemp products. So that was 2014 to 2018. Colorado signed on, Kentucky signed on, Oregon then signed on, probably like Ole Miss signed on as a university. So we were in Colorado going, hey, this is happening. They're growing for CBD. Oh, sweet, CBD. We'd been hearing about it. It's like, okay, this is a medical thing. Okay, cool. And it's going to come from hemp. I get it. Let's go. And so my buddy up there, well, that's when I came together with what would be one of my main partners and still is my main partner today. And he basically went to a welding shop, asked these people if they knew how to weld aluminum. My buddy and his father and grandfather are 3 generations blacksmith in this shop in Evergreen, Colorado. And Grandpa was like, oh, you got to call Aaron. He just left last week, man. He had these 2 guys from Amsterdam with him, he loves to talk about this stuff. And I get this call. My buddy's like, hey, this is my name. Grandpa told me to call you. And he said you'd want to hear about this. We're growing, I'm extracting CBD from these hemp plants. And I've got this trailer and I'm going to extract CBD. And I'm like, okay, sweet. Send it to me. And it's like, he sent me some CBD oil. It was full spectrum CO2 extracted CBD oil. And I was like, all right. I tried it, gave it to my friend, gave it to my dog. I was like, huh. And then I call him back. I'm like, this doesn't do anything. I'll figure it out. But FYI, and he's like, well, how much are you taking? Take this much. So I took more. And I'm like, okay, I can sense it. Okay, I sense it. But how do I use it? Right. And so then it's ironically, up the road in Mertzen, Texas was my saddle builder. And his son just happens to be a first off, a very extremely smart and very, very successful person who loves to smoke weed. The saddle builder was coming down with Parkinson's. And he was like, do you think dad could benefit from this? I'm like, I don't know. Let's try it. And so we gave him 25 milligrams full spec twice a day. And literally 5 days later, they called me and they're like, dude, dad's like running around with a chicken with his head cut off. I'm like, what do you mean? He thinks he's beat Parkinson's. I'm like, what? First off, he didn't beat anything, right? It's day 5, but like, call me back in a week. And in a week, they called me back and they were like, dude, it is like, there's no question. Because JR was getting ready to have to give up the saddle shop because his hands were shaking.
Yeah.
Right. And that early onset and the shaking had stabilized and it enabled him to basically go on for another 2 years and do leather work. And then eventually he passed away. But right when that happened, I was like, we got it. I called up the hill to my buddy Sean. I'm like, dude, we got this. He's like, well, what's the script? I'm like, 25 mgs twice a day. Like, this is it. It's the Parkinson's people. Let's go. And that's when I knew it was on. I was like, all right, it's on. So I like turned my horses out, made some arrangements and was like, come to Dripping Springs. This is 2017. I'd been trading, roping cattle with the locals, met a young man who was no longer employed in the oil field, hired him to take care of the ranch in Ozona, and I came to Austin to go all in on Tejas Hemp. So I formed Tejas Hemp April 2017 on paper, even though we'd been selling CBD for a year and a half at that point legally. And it was like, all right, I need a website. Sweet. I need a merchant processor. Okay, merchant processor. They're like, who are you? Where are you from? You're nobody. You got nothing, and we don't know what you're talking about. This sounds illegal. And it was like, damn it. And I couldn't get one.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
I interviewed with, I don't know, 11 or 12 different banks, turned down by all of them. I finally got a bank in Florida that would work with me. And merchant services, I mean, it wasn't happening back then. No, it was so hard. And then my bookkeeping, I had used QuickBooks and they're owned by Intuit. And so whenever I would send an invoice that was for CBD, something I'm doing totally
legal. You're not allowed
legal.
to do that.
Yeah, they cut me off.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that with QuickBooks. You can send them the invoice, but they're not allowed to pay. You can issue the invoice, but they're not allowed to pay through the system.
And it's only because Intuit, their parent company, doesn't approve of the industry. It's not because of any legal
Same
reason.
with a lot of software applications and technology solutions that are global because they're coming from a global perspective and they're like, hey, we don't get that far into the weeds in your local situation. We're just better off without you.
The people that don't have problems with it are the ones that have established accounts and they've been having some sort of other retail business for a long time. And then they just slip the CBD into it.
Oh, yeah. Those people can do fine.
Yeah.
From our perspective, we were way up the supply chain. Like in the beginning, it was like, oh, this is my buddy Sean. He's a smart dude. He's like, here's what we'll do. We'll go provide the service to the farmer. We'll take the rig to the farm. And then he can pay us a service fee for extracting the hemp. So in the very, very beginning, like I would write a check from Aaron Owens Ranch, which actually said hippie on the check because all the people in Ozona call me hippie and they put it on my checks.
Hippie Aaron.
Just literally.
If you want to find him on Instagram, that's what he is.
And then it was like, okay, I'd write a check to the farm and it would be a farm in Colorado for $3,200. And then I'd pay my buddy $800 for the service. So I'm in for $4,000. I have all this product. It's like, cool. Now I got to go sell that, right? Unbranded, no nothing. Just mostly people at the end of all the dirt roads, old people, because they loved it. It like helped them. I mean, helped their knees. They helped their backs and aches and sleeping and all the things. Up in Colorado, my associate's associate, who was kind of part of the bigger hippie clan, he was able to get merchant processing because he had some cash and he had some assets, some experience and some relationships. The business he built, which I won't sit here and say right now, but it's like that brand he built 4 years later would sell for $37 million.
Whoa.
And so it was like, I'm over here going, damn it. I mean, not like I'm mad at him. I'm super glad for him, but like, this is all of our IP. Like we created this, and it's real and it can be monetized and it's valuable. I'm trying to do that. I can't get merchant processing. I'm going to the Parkinson's meetings. I'm trying to get this product to the people. I got nurses blocking me, telling me CBD doesn't work and the study says this. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. Do you know the difference between isolate and full spectrum? And they're like, what? And I'm like, exactly. So why are we having this conversation? But they're in between me and the patient.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't. I'm like, all I know is I got to go find the Parkinson's people and help them because that's all I know. Like that works and I know it. So let's do that. And it just couldn't come together. So by 2018, I'd run out of all my money. And I was like, damn it. Like I had to, the kid ended up getting a job, moving on. I went back to the ranch. And in 2018, I basically bought and sold and hustled it was $515,000 worth of sheep and goats that year to buy and sell and trade and get the contracting going again to generate money because that's the only way I knew how. And I did that. And then in 2019, I came back and was like, I'm going back in. Right. Like,
Okay. So, yeah, because we have the 2018 Farm Bill.
right.
And that was the year that a lot of people got excited to grow hemp in Texas.
So, yeah, at that point, the pilot program had been going on. So this was all happening legally. We were deep in it. Like, we were 3.5 years in by the time the pilot program converted to a real program. So what most people don't realize is that the 14 to 18, there was action. The Colorado farmers were making $50,000 an acre. Like, they
Is
were
it
making
because
bank.
Texas didn't sign up for it?
Yeah,
It was
Texas-
like a
no.
state, the state had to sign
Department
up
of
to be in the program.
Agriculture. It was a pilot program, right? And so in 18, the Farm Bill passed and took the pilot program and said, oh, this was a success. Let's do it. Industrial hemp is now legal. Cool. Here comes industrial hemp. Well, then everybody's like, how do we go? How do we go? Colorado was already going. Everybody else was trying to figure out their program. So in 2019, everyone in the United States grew hemp, right? There was 525,000 acres of hemp grown in 2019. People went and borrowed money. They took their own money. They did everything they could. They bought farms. They bought John Deere equipment. They went and planted all this stuff. Okay.
But there was
How many
no supply
acres?
chain.
How many acres do you think it takes to supply the United States CBD for 1 year?
I don't know. I think we've had this conversation before and it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's like you take the population of the country, you take 10% people are users, put them at 25 megs twice a day. The answer is 8,500 acres. So we produced 525,000.
But 525,000 of medical grade or
Of all
industrial
headed
or a
for
blend?
CBD.
Oh,
Everything
wow.
back then was about
Whoa.
CBD, right? It was 2019. Holy cow, the Colorado farmers are getting 50,000 an acre. We're going in. We're buying this
And just
$4 million
flooded the
farm and
market.
$2 million
Wow.
worth of equipment. And here's our $1 million budget. And everybody did that. And then what happened was the price of CBD, which in commodity value is the isolate, basically tanked. It was worth less than it cost to get it extracted, produced and extracted, and everyone lost everything. So the good thing about being conservative and being, Texas, which is conservative, and I continue to learn the value of conservative approach, is we didn't get involved that year. People in Texas would have gone all in. Hell, I'd have been one of them. You know what I mean? It's like, because why not? It's opportunity. And then you'd have lost everything. So it wasn't until 2020 that Texas said, okay, you can farm in Texas. So,
Well, and the people that had farmed industrial hemp, a lot of them struggled with it being hot. So whenever it was time to test it, it was over the 0.3 limit. And also the fact that there was no supply chain. There was no one to purchase it from
not
them.
anything industrial.
Right.
Hell, not even for CBD.
So
I mean, you can grow it, but it's not like the sale barn. The sale barn's open every week. You can drop any kind of livestock you want off once a week in almost all these little towns, and they'll buy them. You drop them off, you give them a name and an address, you drive off, you get the check in the mail 4 days later. That doesn't exist for hemp. Never has. Well, not in our lifetime anyway. But
Not yet.
whatever the case, yeah, that's the way that kind of goes down, right? So it's like Colorado, we're doing all that. And that's when we figured out the water thing. It was like, well, what are we going to do? It's like, okay, well, if we're frustrated about not being, merchant processed and banked, the hell with that. Okay, we'll give the medicine to the sick people. Oh, we're getting blocked over here. Geez, it's like, what's the future? The future's water. We figured that out right away. We were like, oh, CBD living water and isolate CBD, which does nothing for you, is in this water and people are buying it up like crazy. What if we put our oil in water? Right. And it was like, we spent 6 months figuring out how to do that and we got it done. We figured out how to put oil into water. Right. So now you have true full spectrum CBD. So the same stuff that was taking the 72-year-old man with Parkinson's, we could now put in a bottle of water.
Well, and so let's talk about that too, because the technology is the oil is suspended inside a tiny.
So you're talking nano emulsification, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, and so, yes, thank you. Nano emulsion allows us to have this drink and it move into our system faster. That's why you can drink it and like get the same kind of feeling you might get from a light beer. That bit of an immediate gratification that you don't get with an edible.
some
that
of them make
technology
it with
there.
an emulsion. But yeah, I mean, the foundation of what you're saying is how do you mix oil and water? And the answer is through emulsification. Okay, what's emulsification? Well, that's when you take oil and water, which don't mix, and you mix them with an emulsifier, And then you zap it with a frequency, for example, and you break it into teeny, 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 tiny particles that are nanometers. And the oil molecule is now surrounded by the emulsification molecule. So it's hidden inside that emulsifier. And then that emulsifier is water soluble, so it bonds with water. So you have 2 water molecules or 4, and right in the middle is the emulsifier. And in the heart of the emulsifier is the actual oil.
Is the active ingredient.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the emulsification process, or the nano emulsification process, right? That's right where we are today. So we'd figured that out. And we were like, well, heck, this is it. Let's go do this.
Well, and it's also not just the cannabinoids. It's also with what you guys are doing at Tejas Tonic is the terpenes, which, you know, when you are a connoisseur, you recognize that it doesn't matter what the percentage of THC is in this flower. What is the terpene profile that goes along with it? Because that's going to be what really drives my experience. And so the fact that you're bringing that into the beverage lane, where right now someone might just say, oh, I love the flavor of the mango, or I love the flavor of the lime, or I like the agarita berry best. But it's also like, if you really think about the nuance of your experience, you might be able to tell that each one of these beverages makes you feel a little bit different.
Yeah, terpenes are everything, right? They're everything. The aha moment for terpenes for me is simple. It's like, we've all consumed cannabis our whole life. We know that we have something that makes us feel like a sativa.
If you're listening, you probably haven't, and that's cool.
Haven't? Oh, yeah. This is the Soil Sisters.
Yeah, the Soil
This is
Sisters.
not,
This isn't casually baked.
right. Okay, sorry. Well, you know, here's the way it works then. It's like, okay, you know, some people just say a goat's a goat. But people like me are like, that's a Spanish goat. That's an Angora goat. That's a Boer goat. That's an Alpine, Swiss Alpine goat. Like, they're different. You know, that's a Nubian goat. Like, not just goat, right? So it's like cannabis is the same way. There are nuances, and it's like the same with wine, right? And so what you learn is you learn about these cannabinoids, which are the bulk ingredient or the bulk presence in the oil from the plant. But on top of this 20% cannabinoids is this 1% terpenes. What is that, right? Well, if you zoom into that, you can look at the different levels in that and understand quickly which one is going to make you feel like a sativa, which means get up and run around the block and not be hungry. And then this one over here is going to make you slow down and want to lay down and get hungry. And they're 2 totally different things. This is the difference between an Angora goat and a Spanish goat, which an Angora goat, you have to shear because they grow mohair, right? So you grow mohair on an Angora goat, and that's how people in West Texas got rich from 1925 to 1995. But it's like over here, a Spanish goat, you don't have to shear. Well, it's like there's a difference. There's a big difference. They're black and white, but they're both goats. And that's the same way cannabis is, right? And so once you understand that, then you start to understand, oh my gosh, this whole sativa experience or this whole indica experience I've been having is all jurisdicted for the most part in this teeny little 1%. That's a powerful 1%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoa. And then you start looking at products in the market and you're like, what is it in the product? And you realize they don't even have it. And you're like, well, why not? And then you look around and you realize that they don't even know that they exist. We're in like new country here. People don't have a clue. A lot of people have yet to discover.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's
Yes.
going on.
Yeah, it's still in its infancy here in Texas. Moving here from California a couple of years ago, that's why I was so happy to meet you, because you could have a really nerdy conversation with me and nobody else really knew what I was talking
cannabis.
about yet.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it's about helping the customers understand the experience so that they can choose something that makes sense for them. And I had a girl I played college basketball with messaged me on Facebook Messenger a few days ago and was like, hey, I ordered Tejas Tonic and some gummies, and I've never done any of this stuff before. So can you tell me how much I should take or drink? And I don't get on Facebook Messenger that often. And so then I got a follow-up message like, so I messaged you a few days ago. So she'd just been sitting there with your products and just wanted somebody to assure her,
Sure.
like, yeah, drink the whole drink or start with one gummy or whatever. So, you know, it is.
Well, heck, let's talk about that right quick, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you smoke hemp or cannabis or anything, it happens right now at full speed. If you were to eat an edible for cannabis, it's a very slow go. It takes forever. And then when it kicks in, it's really strong and lasts a very long time.
Well, and of course, there's nuance to that.
Sure, but like why in general, right? I'm just trying to say there's black and there's white. And then there's the middle, and the middle's the drink, right? But let's understand why. If you eat an edible, the product you eat, the gummy, whatever, it goes down into your system and it gets metabolized by your liver. When the THC goes into your liver, it comes out as a metabolite called 11-hydroxy-THC. 11-hydroxy-THC is typically 3 to 4 times stronger than the THC that you consume.
Well, and you'll have your first experience because when it goes through your digestion, you'll start feeling high. Then when it goes through your liver, then it amps that up. It dials that up a few more notches.
Exactly, right? And it's like what I'm saying is that if you understand that, or whether you understand it or not, maybe you just ate a gummy in your past sometime, and lots of people have eaten edibles. And most of us that have at a young age or figured it out that it's like, you just want to be careful. You don't want to get in over your head, because if you get in over your head, you're there and you can't get away. Right. And it's like,
we say you can take more, but you can't take less.
That's right. So it's like, okay, so, I don't really want to smoke this joint. Okay, great. Well, if I eat this gummy, first off, gummies are great once you figure out what your dose is, but where does the drink fall? It's like, what happens is when you take the active ingredient, which is hemp, it's like you put it into water through nanoemulsification. Now you drink that. What happens is that THC does not travel through your liver. It's 99+% water. It literally just goes straight into your system. So whatever you experience, it's going to happen not as fast as smoking, but way sooner than eating, right? It's not like an edible. It's going to take 5 to 10 minutes and it's affecting you. But that effect is 1/3 the strength as an edible. So let me translate that. It's like, if you're comfortable with eating 5 milligrams of THC, and you know what that feels like, that's the equivalent of drinking 15 milligrams or 20.
And so now, because we are cannabis consumers and we're talking about Tejas hemp, a hemp beverage, and
Tejas Tonic.
Tejas Tonic, yes. Tejas hemp is still a thing.
It is. Yeah.
And we're going to tie those two together in a bit. But for somebody saying, how is this legal?
Right.
So talk about how you use hemp to be able to create a beverage that has 5 milligrams of THC in it.
So, yeah, the definition of hemp is cannabis sativa L, which is cannabis sativa with a delta-9 THC content of 0.3% or less. So generally speaking, 1/3 of 1%. As long as there's 1/3 of 1% or less THC concentration by weight, right? By weight. That's the whole key, by weight. So 0.3% by weight, then it's hemp. So all cannabis has THC, right? It's like the fat content on a cow. High fat content in these breeds, less fat content in these breeds. Same. High THC, that's type 1. Type 1 cannabis is high THC, low CBD, that's marijuana. Type 3 cannabis is high CBD, low THC, that's hemp. So as long as we cultivate this plant and then we get the sample taken, we send it to the lab, the results don't even go to us. The results go to the state, the Department of Agriculture. And then they look at it and they say, okay, the THC concentration of the plants that Aaron's growing is less than 0.3% by weight. He's good to go. He can harvest. So then I harvest that and then I extract that oil. And then when I put that oil into a product, I look at the product, and the easiest way to think about it's a gummy. If you have a gummy and your gummy weighs 3 grams, the legal amount of THC could be that's allowed in that could be calculated by saying, what is 0.3% of 3 grams? And the answer is 9 milligrams. So 9 milligrams is now the legal amount of THC you can put in a 3-gram gummy. So I put 5. But what if you had a 6-gram gummy? Then you could put 18 milligrams. Yeah. So the scale goes up and down. That's why it's legal. It's like, they didn't mean for that to be the case. And I wouldn't even call it a loophole. It's just a reality. It's like, if you want more THC, build a heavier product. So Tejas Tonic is a 16-ounce can. 16 ounces is a pound. 0.3% of that is like 12 or 1,400 milligrams. So you could put enough THC in there to meet Jimi Hendrix and it would still be legal. But you don't need all that. You know what I'm saying?
No, you don't. Not if you want to just stay in a chill, friendly
Not if you're
state.
trying to,
That's right.
stay in a friendly state and get easy.
Okay, so now that you brought that up, we have a legislative session coming up in Texas, and there have been some preliminary hearings, and we've got some folks who are, and I'm saying folks that go to work in the Capitol, who are a little bit peeved seeing all of these hemp beverages doing well and almost like we got fooled again, and so they're wanting to come down on the drinks, among other things, I believe. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't think they're trying to come down on the drinks. I think that's the last part of what's going on.
Well, that's
People
good news.
think they get stirred up because they wanted to talk about drinks specifically at this last emergency meeting, which was nothing more than people coming out and saying, by the way, y'all, there are THC drinks everywhere. All of a sudden, we need to talk about this. So the bigger picture is simple. When they legalized hemp, there was a couple of the old boys that said, we'll do this as long as nobody gets high. And they said, okay. And they did it. And then turns out people ended up getting high. And it's like, no one really knew that. And that wasn't really the intention. It's the way the cards fell. And so they're holding their ground. And it's like, I can respect that. But it's like, okay, cool. We've gone on a few sessions now. I mean, the reality is the cat's out of the bag. And so what's happening is it's like in the very, very beginning of all this, we were all making CBD product, right? It's like we were making full spectrum CBD oil. We were putting it into water and boom, COVID happens. During COVID, Texas turns on, we start farming. That was 2020. Boom, now we're farming because it's the only thing we can do during COVID. And also we love farming. And if there's an opportunity to make money there, we're going to try it. And so we're trying it. And then while we're doing that, these hippies were like, hold on, I can take this CBD isolate that's left over from the 525,000 acres that no one ever did anything with. And I can do a chemical reaction and I can synthesize THC. And if I use this kind of chemical, I can actually make Delta 8 THC instead of Delta 9. Ooh, the law says Delta 9 has to be below 0.3%. So technically I could turn the dial up on the Delta 8 THC in a product and get someone high without breaking the law. And that's exactly what they did. And so when they did that, everyone got fired up. They were like, dang it. Like we weren't trying to have all this. And honestly, we didn't even see it coming because no one's ever consumed Delta 8. Oh, you mean some freaking scientist in Israel who's like the deepest studied person on the earth that can tell you about Delta 8? Great.
Okay, well,
So
and
that doesn't
I will
make it a
say,
mainstream product.
my bestie in California is a formulation scientist. And so she had been formulating with actual cannabis-derived Delta 8 because it does exist naturally in small quantities in the cannabis plant. It does not occur naturally at all whatsoever in hemp. And so when I was in California, I consumed Delta 8 a lot. It's a little bit more, when it's naturally occurring, it is more of a mellow high than Delta 9. I get to Texas and I'm like, where is this Delta 8 everywhere? Like, this is synthetic. This is not real.
Oh, yeah.
And so when people would come to me and say, I've been taking this and making them feel even more high or a weird high, like it wasn't the same experience as it is when it's naturally occurring. So I was constantly like, if you're going to do it,
That's
find
interesting.
a Delta
You actually
9.
consume Delta 8 on purpose in California. That sounds
Yes.
like a California thing. Not to say anything bad about California, but
Hey, you know
Kate's
what?
from California.
There's when you're looking for a nuanced experience, that's the fun part about being in a legal cannabis state
You
is
can
that
do all kinds of
people,
experiments.
yeah, people can explore and create really cool products. I liked it.
So I guess, in the microcosm of a far out land somewhere on a hill in California, someone actually figured out how to get Delta 8 naturally and they experimented with it, and they should, because who knows what they're going to come up with.
Well,
and
and
that's
also
cool.
THCV, skinny weed.
Which is natural as heck and doesn't need to be converted.
That's what I'm saying. There's so many valuable cannabinoids. Even CBG, the mother of all cannabinoids. That's what I was telling Crystal. I want hemp as a forage to be on the list because I'm like, those animals would just be consuming CBG. There's no THC in the plant yet.
An early stage.
Yeah. Me spending $60 on a sack of hemp cake. I'm not rich. We're not feeding our animals that. That's not sustainable. We want our animals to
you gotta
work
get
for
the price
us.
down.
Yeah. And hemp is a superfood and grazing animals. And we think about a niche market for farming and ranching, having direct to consumer grass fed hemp finished beef or lamb or
So
whatever
here, let's
is a thing.
if
or should be a
especially
thing.
people listening to this are farmers and ranchers, like here's a reality. Okay, goats are a browser, cattle and sheep are a grazer, right? Cattle and grazers eat grass. Axis deer, cattle, sheep, they eat grass. Goats and deer are browsers. They don't eat grass. I know that's interesting, right? So what do they eat? They eat weeds, they eat forbs, they eat anything but grass they eat, right? Okay, so what happens if you grow a bunch of flowering cannabis plants? Like, will they eat that? And the answer is no. I've done it. And it's like, they don't eat it because why? Because once the flower has made it to full bloom, it puts out an oil, and that oil is its defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And so they eat it, and then they spit it out, and then they just go back to eating the leaves. And so it's like, you can actually turn a bunch of goats out on your hemp field if you want and have them all eat all the big leaves for you.
That's great.
Which is pretty handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not saying grazing it to
No.
when it's at flowering.
But it's fun. I had to figure it out for myself because I was like, this is really interesting. Like, I want to figure this out. So it's like, do they eat it? And the answer is no. Will they eat the leaves? Absolutely, because they love eating leaves, at an early stage. But that's on the production side. On the end cycle, the truth is that the protein in a hemp plant is coming from the grain. The grain of hemp has like the most protein of any other thing.
Mhm.
And the hemp plant can be produced more times in a year than the other ones. And it generally, the efficiency of how much water it uses versus results is smaller than all the other ones. So that's why hemp is a good resource for protein. Is like, if we're going to get proteins from plants, it's the most renewable plant, and the efficiency is there. And then you get all that grain. You take that protein, you can feed it to yourself, you can feed it to your animals, you can feed it to everything, and they love it. They freaking love it. And like, at this point, I watched a gentleman very first year go out and do 40 acres in Western Panhandle right on New Mexico line. We got together, hooked him up with a guy I knew. They do organic beef for HEB, I think. And so they basically raise their cattle. They have their silage farm where they grow corn, and then they corn silage, and then they feed that to the cattle to finish them, and then they send them in, right? He put 40 acres of hemp in, and then he silage chopped it, and then went and fed it just like that.
Yes.
And it was like, it just didn't pan out. Like, the results
really?
didn't yield. It didn't yield what we wanted in the cattle versus the corn silage they were already doing. It was just a raw dog experiment.
Yeah.
Like, now we know more about like how to manage that a little bit, which is,
Was it the amount?
it's genetics, it's plant density. Was there too many stems? Did we let them go to, like, it was just a lot of factors. The reality is that the nutritional value is not found in the stalks, right? So like, if we would have stripped that and taken the biomass and the grain and the leaf, like I guess the foliage, that would have worked more efficiently than silage chopping the whole thing. Because what we did, silage, is you just chop it all.
Yeah.
You just chop it all, the stalks and everything. So really, hemp needs to be pulled apart at least in two different directions.
Well, and and just having a double harvest where you're harvesting the tops.
Yeah, the tops
and then,
that's what can go to whatever we're talking about. And then the stems need to be fiber and herd. All the protein comes from is the grain.
Yeah.
And think about, what is corn? Corn is grain. Like, all these people do is they just grow corn, and then they strip the corn cobs off, and then the rest of the plant they chop into pieces and feed them to cows. Right? And then the corn they feed to us. Right? And so it's like, if you take the hemp
I
plant,
think they're making high fructose corn syrup to poison us, but keep going.
yeah, like that. But the hemp thing, it's like, you basically grow it, you let it flower, there's the grain. Okay, you pull it, you can thresh it. So you pull all this, you harvest the top, like you said, pull all your tops off. Now you can thresh it and separate the seed from the rest of the biomass. The biomass can go and do whatever you want with it. You can extract it, you can feed it, you can do whatever you want. Over here with the grain, you can press it for oil. You can sort out the good grain to plant later, take the B's and the C's and go over there and press them for oil. Or you can husk them, deshell them or husk them or whatever you want to call it. The husks have a value. There's a feed, right? And then the hearts is in the middle, the hemp hearts. The hemp hearts have the most potential out of the whole plant. It's where all the protein's concentrated. And so it's like, that can be like turned into increased concentrations or purified protein from a natural, legit organic source, which is like, I don't know, GNC type stuff. Or
and everybody can go into their store and get the Manitoba hemp hearts. We've been getting those from
good for you.
Canada forever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's one of the issues too with the growing hemp in Texas, and especially for dryland farmers. Those seeds are so delicate that in this heat, you just run the risk of the husk crushing and dropping the heart out
Right.
prematurely. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done with the plant. I just think Texas is awfully rugged, and we're still figuring out how to do it in a way that is going to be beneficial for the farmer. But if you're going to make the enterprise, you got to be able to make money off of it.
It's pretty black and white. And, we started this conversation on what's going on with the session, and I'm giggling because I'm remembering that right now. It's real black and white. It's like, look, people figured out how to synthesize THC. Okay, sweet. Whenever people like me started putting natural THC into the space, everyone was like, oh, well, we want to put Delta 9 in the space too, because like you pointed out, it's twice as strong. And so what they knew now is that they could do the same process they were doing to synthesize Delta 8 to synthesize Delta 9. I mean, you can't blame them for that. It's business, and that's cheap. So why would they not do that, right? And it's like the feedstock for that synthesis is CBD isolate, right? And so you want to talk about farmers, it's like, if all I'm doing is buying CBD isolate to convert to THC to put into a product, where does the CBD isolate come from? And it's like, at some point we chewed up that 2019 production. It's been 5 years. A lot of THC has been converted and sold. Like, where's it coming from now? Because I don't know one farmer that's farming for CBD isolate. And I'm not saying I know it all, but like, I've looked around. We farm. There's not a business in farming for isolate. It doesn't exist. There's no margin. There's no profit. So then where's it all coming from? And the answer is that because there's no one there to really jump in and figure it out or tell you or do the due diligence, like no one knows. And the reality is it may or may not be from a guy named China, right? And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's China or anywhere. I'm not even trying to pick on China. I don't think it matters. The point is that it's coming
it does
from
matter.
I don't think it matters where it comes from if it's not coming from the U.S.
Exactly.
Right? That's what it boils down to. If your labor costs are cheaper in other countries, then you can do a mechanized agricultural production and have a product that has less cost than we can in the U.S. And that's what's happening. And so that's the issue, in my opinion.
Yeah. So when we were having our smoke circle earlier down by the creek, we were talking about the implications of getting products from another country and what that does to the American farmer. I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah, we're talking about squash. It's like if you grow 50 acres of squash, there's a cost associated with that. And then there's a return. And whatever that is what it is. Okay. If you go to Mexico, the cost is less. But if HEB's buying all of the squash from from Texas and Mexico, because NAFTA enables HEB to do that, they're not giving two different rates. And whatever rate they're giving, it's like the guys from Mexico are making more money on that trade than the guys from Texas, because the labor cost is different. So if you're a business person, an ag business person, you're going to move production or source production in a different environment to increase your margins so you can make money in this commodity game, right? And what that's done is it's driven all the production out of the countries. That's all I'm saying, is that this is the farm bill. And like, unfortunately, this creativity that was smart and nifty and it got all done, now it's become a precedence in production practice. And not only that, but they took the Delta 8 and then they made the Delta 9 and then they made the Delta 10, then they made the Delta 12, and then they took the Delta 8 and turned that into HHC and then HHCO and HHCP and THCO and THC. And Jesus Christ, no one's, what the hell is going on anymore?
Yeah.
And now you're a politician and you're like, holy cow, I thought we were making rope, not dope. And now you've got 12 different things that even my pothead friends don't know what it is. And they're for sale at the gas station. We have got an issue here.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's going on.
And I would get emails all the time about, well, what is HHC? Or tell me about this new THCO. And I'm like, stay away from it. It is synthetic.
Never heard of it.
I don't know. I'm going to have to do homework to get back to you. So my quick response is, if it's not natural, don't do it.
That's right. And all those were they were created overnight, and creating something overnight to do experiments with is the absolute wonderful path to solution. But commercializing that and putting it into mainstream distribution available to the public is not a good idea.
No.
And that's what's happened. And so the risk now going into session is that, and I don't want to call them out, but there's a couple old schoolers that I respect, but they're just like, dude, we're not having this. You know what? Why don't we just ban it all? And all of us, we're like, hey, listen, like,
and by ban it all, we mean ban all synthetics.
They're saying ban all THC.
Everything. Okay.
They're like, let's just get rid of all of this. We told you we didn't want anyone getting high. Now we're throwing all this at us, right? It's like, why don't we just ban it all? And we're like, well, hold on a minute. We don't need to, eradicate or whatever that word is. We need to regulate, right? We don't want to get rid of everything. We just need to regulate it. And they're like, how are we going to regulate these 13 different things that we never heard of? Yeah. And it's like, hell, we don't even know how to do it, right? It's because no one's ever,
stop making them.
It's crazy, right? It's the synthetics have spun out, and R&D on synthetics is fine, but like mainstream, is just not the way. And so the bottom line is, going into session right now, it's like, what's the goals? Well, I mean, I know what my goals are, and my goals are simple. It's that I want to preserve the right to produce and distribute plant-derived THC in the state of Texas from the industrial hemp plant, because that is how you enable the supply chain. That's how you put a farmer to work. That's how you put your people to work, and you make products that are safe and can be regulated in a sensible way. And you take the focus away from 13 things and you just pick one thing, which is THC. 5 years ago, no one that listens to us right now or anyone around us even knew what any of these things were. When everyone said THC, they just meant one thing, Delta-9 THC. Now it means all these things. It never meant all these things. That's brand new. So the approach from my perspective is, listen, what if we just banned all the synthetics so that we could make the jobs of the people that are willing to bridge the gap and work with us? They're like, look, the cat's out of the bag. We get that. But where are we supposed to get a handle on this thing? It's like, I have an idea. Why don't we throw 98% of it away and let's just focus on this one thing and give you guys, and we'll work with you and we'll regulate THC, which we all know is going to happen one way or another. We might as well get after it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did hear that Trump and the governor, that Abbott, are talking about legalization of cannabis.
I mean, we all know it's happening.
Yeah.
And there's no question it's going to happen. No one can define how and when and all the particulars, but here's the opportunity. The opportunity is now.
Yes.
Right. And so it's like, in Texas right now or in the country, do you want to ban it all? Of course not. We've got to progress right now. Like, we just need to get the nonsense out of the way. Listen, what's happening is the synthetics gave access to a market to people that were very smart, and they built businesses, and the majority of their revenue, whether they know it or not, is a synthetic product. They could care less, some of them, like, and that's okay because they're smart business people. There's no emotions involved. All I'm saying is that if we get rid of the synthetics, here's the bottom line, is that the thing that used to cost $900, now it costs $2,000. And that's it. But you can make so much money spending $2,000 that it doesn't matter. And when you spend that $2,000, that $1,100 just went to a farmer. You know what I mean? A Texas or an American farmer. And so that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. So I have two thoughts. One, if we do it this way, then there is a record from seed to sale.
Oh, there can easily be, right? I mean, you have a production license, you have a lab from your harvest permission. So you basically get your lab results to be able to harvest. And then from there, you have your license, you have your lab results. Okay, you're good to go from the state. There's a form there. Now you go into whatever your final product is. And it's like your final product has a lab result. And so it's like now your lab result has a batch ID that matches the batch ID on the ingredient. And then the ingredient has a batch ID that matches the material it was extracted from. And then that material that was extracted came from the farmer that had the license that.
Yeah, it's connected to a farm.
And so that can all be done. You know, we don't want to be over-regulated. Like, we don't want to make it so hard that it's like, I mean, I'm not a computer guy.
But each of those things are already
manage horses and goats, not a bunch of paperwork.
But my point, though, is all of that stuff is already required.
Yeah, it's by law. You're supposed to have all that. And it's like, people like us that actually grow and do that, we do. I mean, we really have all that. But does everyone in the market? And the answer is no. And the reason is because they're buying an ingredient or a product from someone that bought an ingredient from someone that made that ingredient from something that they bought from a broker. And it's like, that thing they brought from a broker is called CBD isolate. And it's like, where did that come from? And no one can tell you. But no one's looking, so who cares, right? Do you want to spend all your energy trying to chase all that, or just keep it real simple and go down here and be like, here you go. Why don't we just ban synthetics, and then like we'll regulate THC and start thinking about things like age gating and making it 21 and up. And like, do we need to have a conscious input to the strength of these things? And if we do, are we going to allocate that to the liquor people, or are we just going to copy that formula and do our own supply chain, which would be smart, so we don't just give our world to all the liquor people overnight?
Yeah. Just giving it to the liquor mafia.
Exactly.
Right. And I mean, let's not talk down on them. I mean, like, if it wasn't, like, here's the way I look at it. Yeah, they are organized. They are the mafia. It's like post-prohibition.
I'm like, that's just what it is.
But it's like, because they were smart, because they busted their ass and they fought for it and they made it happen. That doesn't mean I want to give them my thing, but I respect it. And in the end, I'm in the beverage business. And it's like, if it wasn't for their mechanism, I wouldn't have a business. So I'm going to appreciate and respect them and be like, hey, dude, I want to work with you. Let's make money together.
Yeah. I want to give a scope to this. And I have this figure written down somewhere that's in my backpack. But what is the size of the Texas hemp market?
Geez, I have no idea. That's a great question. I know that Texas is like the 5th largest economy on earth.
Yeah, it's huge. The number, it's a big number.
So it's big. I don't know what it is in dollars, to be honest. I have no idea, but it's massive. It's more than I could. I mean, if I could get 10% of it, I'd be done.
Well, and so this is my point. If we want to make sure that these hemp businesses continue to thrive and grow, like, we need to get organized this session, get something good put in place and done, because if recreational cannabis becomes a thing in the state, because medical cannabis is already a thing, then you have a whole new competition. So it's like organized.
We need to unify. I mean, and the only thing that's been separating the hemp people is this conversation we're having.
No. Pause, because you are still going to be competing. I'm not saying we're doing it in a bad way. I'm just saying the recreational cannabis, people are going to still need to go to a dispensary to purchase it. They can still go to the corner store and get your drink. So how do you make sure that you secure the hemp farmer, the Texas hemp business?
Well, this is where you say, God bless conservatives, right? Because it's like taking it this slow has given us a perspective that almost no one in the country still has.
Yeah.
We have medical marijuana, and that's cool, and it's limited, and that's that. But then this federal thing happened. And now our perspective is that we can make way more of a margin. We have a lower barrier to entry. We can entrepreneurial move in, create a huge business, and make real money, and do that in an intelligent way. Like, I don't need any of my stuff going through a dispensary. I don't need that. We don't have recreational marijuana. We will, but not right now. It's like we have everything we need right now. It's like I don't need the medical marijuana people trying to suppress what we're doing. It's like, thankfully, we have the youngest, least developed program in the country. They have way less chance, because in the end, this boils down to dollars and lobbying, and like, everybody can try to outspend everybody, but whatever. In the end, it's about what's right. And what's right is that we're trying to put farmers into the supply chain and create revenue for an agricultural environment that's trying to survive. That's it, right? And so this is an opportunity. Do we need regulation? Absolutely. How far into the regulation? Do we need them to tell us how much we can put on a product? I don't think so. Do we need them to maybe tell us that if we're going to make it X amount strong, that it needs to be in a different environment than the corner store? Okay. I can't buy tequila at the Circle K, but I can buy beer.
Oh, I'm glad that you just brought that up. So what about bars carrying your product? Because there's a number of people now that are living a California sober lifestyle, or, that's what do you call it here?
Well, they don't call it that, but I don't know. We quit drinking.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly right.
Well, there's a lot of folks that have
We're
quit
on
drinking.
rehab, which means we got an ounce of weed over here and a 12-pack of Budweiser. We're trying to take it easy.
All right. So they still want to go listen to some live music. Can they get your product in a bar?
Yeah, totally. So it's like, here's the cool thing about all this is the bottom line is that this is an industrial program. It's a federal agricultural program. It's very enabling because we support agriculture as a country. And now we have this product that's really an agricultural product that's gone into food, which is what's supposed to happen. Yeah. And it's like, okay, if you want to sell Tejas Tonic, all it takes is getting on the Department of State and Health Services website, which is DSHS. You get on their website, and in less than 10 minutes, you fill out a form and you give them $155, and they give you a retail hemp permit. And anyone can sell anything from hemp with that permit. And that's it. Simple as that.
Bars, restaurants, retail stores.
There is zero regulation currently as to where these things can be sold. And that's kind of nice. Like they sell Tejas Tonic in the putt-putt places down around San Marcos. And I love that. Like the other day on a Sunday, I got a picture from a couple of my friends from San Angelo from freaking 35 years ago. And it's like my friend, her husband, their baby, and their friend. And it's Sunday at 9 a.m. saying, oh man, sweet, we got Tejas Tonic at putt-putt today. So it's like there's a perfect example of a couple of adults that are responsible, taking their child, doing a family thing, being able to consume something that's not going to get them really intoxicated, and they're going to be able to enjoy a Tejas Tonic at putt-putt and go home and go on about their day. No hangovers, no nonsense, right? So right now, you cannot produce a cannabis and alcohol product in a manufactured good. So I can't sell you Tejas Tonic with alcohol in it. But there's nothing that says I can't put Tejas Tonic in a glass with tequila and a lime and then call it a Tejano. You can do that.
Nice.
And if you go to the Devil's Backbone
I'm into
Tavern,
it.
you can get a Tejanita, which is a shot of tequila with a shot of Tejas Tonic and a lime. Tejanita.
Tejanita.
Oh, they're pretty tasty.
All right.
Yeah, so you can sell at bars, restaurants, anywhere. It's really just about like getting into the supply chain, right? That's where we are. Like, we're not Anheuser-Busch. We're just some old boys from the country trying to sell some beverage. And so it's like, you learn quickly, like you got to get in distribution. And like, what does that look like? Well, there's liquor distribution, then there's beer distributions, there's food distribution. Well, the food people aren't picking up the category yet. The non-alcoholic independents, they love it, but they're small and there's hardly any distributors that can survive selling bottled water. So most of that stuff travels through like Coca-Cola or the food people, and they're not touching it. So then you're over at the beer people. Beer people are like, we want to sell our own, we want to sell beer.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's cool, but they're working. One of them is working with us now, and that's great. We're figuring out how to work together as a mutually beneficial thing. The liquor people are the ones right now because they have the liquor stores where the people come want to buy something to take home, which means they're not buying one. And then those certain licenses are able to get to the on-premise because that's the way the liquor law is set up. And if you're an on-premise, why would you want to have to deal with an individual supplier or another distributor? If a distributor could back up that you're already dealing with and just give you a box over on the right, you could check and get this product, you would take it. But if you have to introduce a whole new relationship, that's taking up more bandwidth. Is it really worth it? And the answer is no for most of these people. And that's what the battle is it's not a battle, but that's the challenge for us, right? It is a battle, I guess. Our challenge is to figure out who to work with and where and how to get integrated. In the end, this isn't gambling. It's not luck. It's just the whole world's out there and the demand is beyond anything we'll ever fulfill.
It's working 12 to 14 hours a day for $100.
It's right. It's working. You got to bust, if you get out there and figure it out and put the time in, it's there. You just got to figure it out and plug in all the pieces and get the puzzle put together and survive the time that it takes to get that done.
And I think that folks from West Texas, as our dad would say, people are tougher out in the West.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
there's a level of grit.
Yeah, it's grit for sure. I mean, I don't want to say we're the greatest gift to anything or whatever, but I will say that I was over in New Zealand with some old hens that run a lot of livestock, and they were telling me about cattle stations in Australia, which are the largest cattle operations on earth. Like they'll run 50, 60,000 head of cows on massive outback, right? And they say that the toughest people on earth come from West Texas.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up on that note.
I like it.
If you're listening, you can go to tejastonic.com, correct?
Go to tejastonic.com and click on the store finder, and you can find the store nearest you. We also ship daily. We can deliver everything right to your house. We now have a whole line of gummies, or a whole line is in 3 flavors to match the 3 flavors we have. So, you can get yourself a case. We do free shipping on cases. Get some gummies, get you a sticker and a t-shirt, and know that you're supporting a Texas farm that's vertically integrated into a Texas-made product.
And if you use promo code SISTERS, you'll get a discount on that.
There you go.
Heck yes.
That's right. At checkout.
Yeah, that's right. Apply your code at checkout. Well, Aaron, thank you for having us.
Sure.
I love and adore you. I appreciate what you do. And I remember taste testing your stuff when I first got here and told you it was still a little bitter and you had some work to do. And I think it turned out just right.
So smooth.
Thank you.
So good.
It is smooth, right? What do you think of that agarita berry?
I didn't even know what an agarita berry was until you shared this, and it's delicious.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And it is, that's the real Texas berry right there, the agarita berry. I do love that.
Yeah.
There are some agarita plants out there. Mine are a little chewed up right now, but you got some of them for sure.
Yeah.
In March, they'll bloom a yellow bud, and then they'll turn into a little pink berry about early April. And that's where you make the pie and the jam and the tonic.
Nice. I love it.
So good.
Native Texans supporting Texans, supporting the
Ingenuity.
Soil Sisters.
Yes.
I mean, it's the
Well, y'all are
friend
doing
economy
a good thing.
in
Don't let
action.
anybody walk away without realizing that y'all are putting in a ton of work on the agriculture side, the real agriculture side. Like what you're doing over there is not hitting the surface on mainstream yet. I don't know if it is or not, but I don't think so. I feel like I can see it because I know things. But that's a lot of good work, and it's progress, and it will pay off. I mean, Panda Biotech's in the game now. Oh, we have a cell barn. There's only one, but it's the biggest one in North America.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's a lot of potential. It's going to keep moving in the right direction.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being a mentor in the
Shoot,
farming
yeah.
and ranching space. And also, we serve on the Texas Hemp Coalition together. And
That's right.
if you want to get in the trenches with us this year, we need all the friends that we can have joining us in the Capitol. We have a hemp day at the Capitol where we go and educate.
Yeah, we literally go into the Capitol and meet with people from the House of Representatives and every once in a while someone from the Senate. And we talk about the industry and the industry's perspective, experience, and opinions on what's happening politically. And they hopefully consider that input as they shape the direction of the law. And I can tell you right now that it's as real as us holding the thing and reading it and telling them we do or don't like a statement. So it's real, but not everybody has the same opinion. And that's why we say, like you were saying earlier, we got to unite everybody. We probably won't unite the medical marijuana people, and the recreational people just want to legalize, and I support them. But in hemp, we need to unify all of the hemp people and find a common ground where we can work together so that all the resources come together to build a road we can all travel down. And I feel very confident that's happening this session.
Yes.
I think the synthetic people have never really ever been synthetic people. They're just business people. And as they learn, they're like, oh, well, heck yeah. Well, we don't want to lose this business, and we support what you're saying. You know what? Let's do that. Let's move all the synthetics out, and let's put a farmer to work, and let's crush this.
I love it.
Your lips to God's ears.
Yes.
There you go.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.